Welcome back, Sons of Pitches. It's episode 18. We are here talking about the UCL. We had the first round first legs of the round of 16 for the Champions League. All the first legs for the round of 16 of the Europa League play. Some nice results we're going to have to talk about. I know G's buzzing right now how good his team played. Me and Jay maybe not so much. But we'll start, of course, in the Champions League, where we did have Bayern finally rekindle a little bit of that form that they've been lacking so much in the league and in the Champions League as well. Smoking Lazio 3-0, inspired by a Kane brace. I have to say, after that first goal by Kane, he kind of just barely got it in there, just a lethal finish from him, just rolled past the keeper. From there, Bayern just took off. That was like the motivation they needed. Changed the atmosphere of the game completely. I thought Lazio actually had it kind of comfortable. And then from there, the floodgates opened. But how did you guys feel about the game?
Yeah, I actually thought, it was always going to be a difficult game for Lazio. They only had a 1-goal advantage. Going away to Bayern is never an easy game. But I thought they played pretty well for the first 15, 20 minutes of the game. If Immobile scores that chance, I think it's a completely different tie. And Harry Kane went right up the field and showed him exactly how you score. And right. I think Immobile proved every reason why I hate him. Because, that's just another example of how he misses just clutch chances all the time. But other than that, I think it was a pretty expected performance. I think I was expecting Bayern to bounce back. They've been struggling a lot, as we've mentioned pretty frequently recently, which is kind of not something you do regularly about Bayern Munich. But I think it was just an expected result. It's going to be interesting to see who they draw, because I think they're going to be struggling to get a result in their next matchup, no matter who it is in the quarterfinal.
Yeah, I think they just it was unfortunate timing for Lazio for this game with such a big gap in between the two. They didn't really get to carry any form from that first leg result to this one, because I think that's now 4 losses in the last 5 for them. So yeah, they were probably just unlucky with the timing, but this is probably the expected result. But given Bayern, like you just mentioned, Bayern's poor form recently this season, and that first leg result, you'd probably think that there was a chance for it. But no, Bayern took care of business like they should, which is good for them considering how poor they've been. The play wasn't necessarily fantastic, but at least they're getting the results, and I think that's been missing from them recently.
Yeah, and I think the timing thing is a key point too, because like we said, Bayern weren't on the best of form. But then they did beat Leipzig in the league. Yeah, they did beat Leipzig in the league 2 weeks ago. Drew against Freiburg, but at least they haven't lost recently. It's been a little bit better. And then, of course, Lazio at the weekend. If you didn't catch the last episode, make sure you catch that one. We did talk about how when Lazio faced Milan this weekend, they just lost their heads completely. 3 red cards towards the end of that game. So they go into this one probably still a little hot-headed, probably didn't shake that off completely, clearly. 3-1 aggregate is probably what we would have expected on paper, right, when this draw first got seeded. But then after
aggregate.
We definitely probably thought Bayern were the better team on paper. Lazio gave us a little bit of a glimmer of hope for them. But yeah, it's a tough one, as this has big implications too. Italy are still leading in the coefficients, but obviously Germany being in second place and then a German team beating an Italian team in the same game is a rough one, but we'll see how that one continues. But another game on the same day on Tuesday was Real Sociedad and PSG. Real Sociedad hosted PSG and lost 2-1. Mbappe inspired his team, just like Kane, with a brace himself. The only 2 goals for PSG in that match. PSG just don't look that good. They progress to the next round, which is the farthest. I know Jay had mentioned this pre-podcast. The farthest they've been in a while. They didn't get past the round of 16 in the Messi years, but they're doing it. Even though they just don't even look as good as they have in the past, maybe they're a little bit more of a team rather than a couple of individuals. I'm just not their biggest fan, and I think they're going to struggle in the next round, specifically because Real Sociedad they made a good account of themselves, but they're not the best, most talented team. So when they come up against these bigger clubs, if Bayern keeps on a roll, a Man City, it's going to be tough for PSG. How did you guys feel about the game?
Well, we just talked about how the timing and form of the two teams in the last game was pretty indicative of what we saw in that tie, and I think that that's exactly the story we saw with Sociedad too. Because if we've been following their league form, they've absolutely burned out. I mean, they've been really struggling lately. They've fallen out of the European race in the league, so I think it was always expected that it was going to be difficult for them. I mean, they did give them. I felt like they played great in the first leg for the first 60 minutes of that game, and they had just let themselves down with a couple of stupid mistakes. This game again, I mean, it was the difference in this game was really just Mbappe's brilliance. I mean, he literally ripped the net apart with his first goal with an absolutely superb finish, in my opinion. That was world class, and it was just, I think it was just another one of those expected results. Same with the first leg. I think this been the story of the Champions League so far. It's been pretty boring for me. I haven't been really too interested in it. I mean, obviously, I've been watching the games and because I'm just sick, to be honest. I have an obsession, but. It was just something I felt like was always going to happen. I would have liked to see Sociedad give a better account of themselves, but like I said, it was just not good timing for them.
Yeah, I completely agree. But I really wish that they could have had this little lull in their season when Benfica had them in 2 games in the Champions League. But I guess it's going to come now. But yeah, for me the biggest takeaway is Nuno Mendes came back from his 9 months, 12 months, almost 12 months out injured, and he was able to get 60 minutes under his belt. Picked up a pretty stupid yellow card, and then got subbed out early, which is probably for the better. Hopefully, he can stay healthy. And yeah, I mean, I feel the same as Nate. It's a team I don't want to like, but I have to care about because of the implications to the Portuguese national team. And yeah, again, the squad is pretty weak compared to years past. They've lost a lot of players,
Right.
rotating a lot of people in. But I also think there's another case of manager overthinking when it comes to Luis Enrique. You've got, I mean, you can say what you want about Gonçalo Ramos, but he scores goals, and for some reason he's buried in this team. He doesn't play. They've spent so much money on him. He doesn't play, and we're still playing. We still got kids playing for PSG. When you have established Champions League goal scorers, so that's still something weird to me that's going on with PSG. But yeah, I mean, this is the one we highlighted as probably going to be one to watch for an upset, but unfortunately just didn't turn out to be. So yeah, this Champions League is pretty much going to the favorites in each round so far, at least this first half of the second legs.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Yeah, a little unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, you were saying we did pinpoint this kind of round of 16 to be kind of boring and straightforward for most of the games. The next game is no different. But just to finish on the PSG game, Jay, you brought up the point with the Portuguese national team. It's not, I mean, for us specifically, we look at Vitinha and Nuno Mendes, right? But I mean, you got Italy's number one for the next, decade probably. You have Morocco's fullback. You have a couple of French players that are key to the national team. And they're kind of buried in a squad that, wins the league almost every year with the exception of, like, the Lille season and Monaco, like, a decade ago. But they just don't do anything else in Europe, and it's tough because there's so many good players. I mean, you talk about, like, from your perspective, Gonçalo Ramos, right? Leaves Benfica after a phenomenal season for big money. Now can't even scratch a starting position. Manuel Ugarte, which is one of Sporting's best midfielders in the past couple of years, outside of like Mateus Nunes, João Palhinha, and now he can't even sniff the starting 11. And they're just, all this talent is just sitting here wasted when these players could play for mid-table to even some of the top Premier League clubs or other clubs around Europe, and they're just wasted in this team, and it's so frustrating.
Yeah.
I kind of hope Mbappe, leaving on a free this summer just causes an absolute fire sale and just like dismantling of the hierarchy of this club, because I want to see this talent go somewhere where they're appreciated, go somewhere where they can really strut their stuff and can be valued, because they're just not in Paris at all. But speaking of another straightforward victory, Man City did take the victory, scoring the same scoreline as the first leg against Copenhagen. Credit to Copenhagen, though. I think you're coming up against Man City. Yeah, this is a pretty heavily rotated side, but there's still some absolute ballers in this team. I mean, you still got to face off against Holland. You still got to face off a World Cup winner and Julian Alvarez. And I think they did pretty well. I mean, to score a goal in both games, I mean, to keep it fairly close in terms of the size of the two clubs, I think it's a respectable performance to them. I think they should leave this competition with their heads high. Nobody thought they were going to win it. Nobody thought they were going to get past Man City when they drew, and they didn't. So you met expectations, and I think that's all you can hope for. But as far as the game itself, how did you guys feel in this one?
Well, I agree. I think Copenhagen can definitely leave this tournament with their heads held high. They've been awesome to watch. They've had a great account of themselves. I will say though, it was a little unfortunate the way this game went. I mean, 10 minutes gone, City were up 2-0 already. I mean, Akanji scored a great goal. I'll give him the credit there. That was the technique on that was brilliant. But Copenhagen's goalie Grabarich has been great. I mean, I've really enjoyed watching him every time I see Copenhagen play. He makes some fantastic saves. Made an uncharacteristic mistake, I think, on Alvarez's goal, and that really just set up the rest of the game. I think the City were just about in cruise control for the rest of the tie. They knew they were through, and they could just pass the ball around, take their time, and do what they want and dictate the game, and pretty much just play keep away for the rest of the match. And it was another expected result. I feel like a broken record now saying that, but it's exactly what it was.
It's funny in this one too, because if you caught us in the last episode, I think it was one of you guys that said it. Man City introducing youngsters at the exact right time, right? They're flying in the Champions League. It was Angelo. And what do? They put in Oscar Bob, Rico Lewis, Guardiol, who's normally a starter but still a young kid. Alvarez, who was starting when Holland was out, but then got pushed to the bench, starts this game. Matheus Nunes. I mean, it's just when you're rolling, and these kids had a good performance, obviously. But yeah, Jay, any thoughts on this game? Yeah.
Yeah, the key to those kids playing is these aren't rare playing opportunities for them. Like all these kids are getting consistent minutes, whether it be 20 minutes a week or something.
Right.
But they're getting game time, so when they're getting thrown in there, and in the Champions League, all the lights are shining. They're ready for it because it's not something that they're not used to. But yeah, how can you? I don't know how a team is able to keep Bernardo Silva, De Bruyne, Kyle Walker, Ake, Foden all on the bench, not have to use them, and still win 3-1 and boss the game. Like that's unreal to me. But yeah, just a class performance. Unfortunate for Matheus Nunes who had that broken finger. That was nasty.
It was dislocated. They snapped that back in.
He didn't think so though.
They snapped. He did. If you watch that clip, KDB is. I think they're because he's talking. Matheus Nunes is talking to Ruben Diaz, so I think they must be talking Portuguese, and KDB's just like trying to understand what they're talking about. It's actually hilarious.
Speaking of speaking Portuguese, Oscar Bob speaks fluent Portuguese.
Really?
It's the weirdest thing. I watched him do an interview, and it was so funny. The guy's not Portuguese at all, but he speaks fluent Portuguese. That was cool.
Yeah, that's interesting because he's just a Man City Academy lad, and he's from Norway, so it doesn't make any sense. Yeah. But one last little tidbit: if the soccer nerds and those who've watched soccer for a long time will know the goal scorer for Copenhagen, Elianusi. Big FIFA player too, if you like that. So that was a fun name. Yeah, that was a fun name to see on the score sheet again. But the last game of the first half of these games. The second leg. Sorry, first half of these games was Real Madrid Leipzig. Unfortunately, this was a 1-1 draw. So the Leipzig saw that 1-0 defeat at home be their undoing, and they will not progress. Real Madrid squeak by. Real Madrid in a bit of in a lull, still getting points and results, but maybe not the way that they would have wanted to. Real Madrid are inspired in this game by Jude Bellingham assist to Vinny Jr., so obviously their star men getting it done on the occasion. Leipzig had a good account of themselves, I think. This Real Madrid team is flying in the league, was flying in the group stage. It's a strong team. There's a lot of world-class players, and despite Leipzig not having the best form in the league kind of recently, besides their last game, they played really well in this one. Willy Orban getting the goal in the net. Xavi Simons was excellent in this game. Openda, I can't believe he didn't score more goals in this game. But how did you guys feel about this one?
Yeah, I have to say, after the first leg, I felt like Leipzig really felt like they should have had more from this game, or from the first game, and I felt that even more after this game. They had so many good chances to score. Openda, he could have scored a hat-trick in the first half. I mean, it's not. How many times can you say a team went away to the Bernabeu and took 20 shots, outplayed Real Madrid, pretty much played them off the pitch? I mean, Real Madrid were the ones that were sitting back, trying to play the low block and really just not. They looked like they were just trying to hold on. It looked like for the last 15, 20 minutes, even after Real Madrid scored and they went up 2-0 on aggregate, I still felt like they never really felt comfortable in this game. I always felt like Leipzig had a chance. And they definitely did have a chance. They had a lot of good chances. Even towards the end, they missed a couple good chances off set pieces. And I have to say, I think it was just one of those cases where it's Real Madrid using their Champions League voodoo, I guess you could call it, where they just know how to get it done in this tournament. When those lights are on and that ball comes out, they just get the result. I don't know how, I don't know why, but Ancelotti and his boys just always get it done, and it was the case again here.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's exactly what it was. Because big missed opportunity for Leipzig. Because like you guys mentioned, they probably would agree that they might have been the better side. But they definitely had more opportunities. But definitely missed opportunity. Only one goal in it between them, and I think that home result was probably what really killed them, to not be able to get a goal at home. Again, Real Madrid, no matter what they do, they're always going to be a threat. They could put out their entire B team, and I think you'd probably still back them against anybody.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because it's interesting that this is the game where Real Madrid don't really show dominance when this is a full strength. You know, there's been a couple injuries in Real Madrid this season, and we've talked about how they've persevered regardless, with some players having to play out of position in different roles. But this is pretty much as full strength as it's going to get, besides Thibaut Courtois, but I'm not going to complain if I have Andre Lunin in net. And then maybe Alaba or Militao at center back. So I'm surprised that Real Madrid just can't do it. But yeah, you're right, G. They were just uncharacteristically sitting back. Normally they're the ones that take it to the other team, or at least on counterattacks, and it just didn't feel like that way.
Even at home too, like I was really surprised to see them play like that.
Oh yeah, in the Bernabeu too, right? All in all, I think we can agree though, the UCL, I mean, there's still 4 games before we progress to the quarters. Just uninspiring, not very excited. I mean, teams are getting wins that they should, and even the Bayern 3-0, like, it's 3 goals, and we should be like saying that was an exciting game, and I didn't think it was all too fantastic or anything like that. So it's underwhelming.
The quality across the board has been pretty ass, to be quite honest with you. I mean, some of the finishing in these games has been atrocious. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. Some of the goals that these players have been missing is just, I feel like I could go out there and score them, and I'm a fucking goalkeeper. So I don't know. I've just been pretty disappointed with it so far across the board in these first 4 two-leg affairs.
Yeah, I will say the second group of games that we're getting next week are definitely a little bit tastier.
Right.
You probably expect them to be more competitive and all that. But yeah, dude, it's been a dud. They're not enjoyable. Haven't been enjoyable to watch or anything. I've been always looking forward to the Thursday games.
Yeah, I mean, the only positive I think I can take out of it so far is that I know we had the whole conversation about the away goal rule. This round didn't feel like that. I mean, I know Lazio were playing away, but it didn't feel like it didn't feel like that Lazio didn't go for it. They kind of did. They just didn't have a good game. PSG obviously scored 2 goals away. Copenhagen went at it against City, and then Leipzig were, like we said, the better team. So at least these 4 games didn't fight. I mean, didn't put fuel on that fire.
That's a little like blurred by the fact that it's the second leg, and I think the away sides are kind of forced to go for it. So
right. Still, I mean, it was just a little devil's advocate.
Yeah.
But the next 4 games, if you don't know, if you're not keeping up with the Champions League, they will be Arsenal, Porto. Porto have the advantage, but they are going to London. It's a 1-0 on aggregate. Barcelona host Napoli, where they're 1-1 on aggregate. We do have Atletico hosting Inter. Inter is up on the score sheet. And then finally, it is Borussia Dortmund hosting PSV Eindhoven, who are 1-1 on aggregate. So actually very similar score lines. The teams with the lead are going away or they're drawn currently. So yeah, it should be tasty. It should be fun. A lot of big home results are needed next week. So we'll see how that goes. But a little bit more exciting, and for at least for us, obviously we have a stake in this. The Europa League, all the first legs happened today, time of recording. We had a couple of good games that I'll mention quickly before we get into our own matches. We did have Liverpool smoke Sparta Prague 5-1. Darwin Núñez getting a brace on the day. continuing his goal scoring form. Luis Diaz scoring as well. Harvey Elliott with a hat trick of assists. We'll probably mention his name later when we do our 5-a-side. So it was an overall good performance, probably an expected performance from Liverpool, but Klopp definitely making the most of his final season at Liverpool. I was a little confused. I don't know if you guys caught his interview after the game, because I assumed that he was just leaving Liverpool, maybe taking a summer off and then getting another job. But the way he worded it, I know I don't think English is his first language, but the way he worded it at the end of the game is that one of the reporters asked him if he liked any of the Spartak Prague players, obviously kind of referring to the fact that maybe he would sign them, and he was like, I'm retiring at the end of the season. Where am I supposed to take him on holiday? So he's making a joke of it, but he used the word retiring. So do we really think that Klopp's not going to go for another job in a year or two? Is that like a thing?
I think
I
think that he's looking at the German job, the German national team job, where again you don't have to really recruit. I think he's probably going to coast a bit, but we'll see. A lot of people say they're leaving and then they're itching to get back into it. So I'm sure it'll be a well-deserved break that he's certainly made up his mind and he's committing to. But yeah, the itch will come back pretty soon.
Yeah, I hope it's just a sort of not English not being a first language thing, and it was just a poor choice of words from him, because
that's probably what he believes, though. I'm not saying that's not what he believes.
Oh, you think?
I think that he probably is retiring from club football. Is in his mind, it's set.
Right.
And he's probably got his eye on the German national team job coming up.
Like a bit of Zidane.
After.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I just have a feeling that sitting on the sidelines for a little bit over a year, he's going to be itching to get back.
Especially a man as animated as he is. But another couple of games, Marseille with an absolute blowout, 4-0 against Villarreal in France. We will see how that second leg goes out.
Yeah,
we did see.
Can I say something about Marseille?
Yeah.
I gotta say, the turnaround that this Marseille team has made is nothing shy of incredible. I mean, they sacked Gennaro Gattuso, and the coach that they brought in is none other than Gasset, the guy who was sacked by Ivory Coast after 2 games. He hasn't lost.
Really?
They've scored like 16 goals in 4 games. They're absolutely unbelievable. Aubameyang scoring goals for fun again. I don't know what's going on in Marseille, but I have to say it's been a lot of fun watching them play the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, you make a good point. Yeah, they do have exactly 16 goals, only conceded 3 in the last 4 games. So that's an unreal record they're having. And they hadn't won prior to that since January 7th. So that's a good almost month and a half without winning, and then now win 4 on the bounce, and 4 on the bounce convincingly. But yeah, like you said, Aubameyang, another Stutz will never forget player, had a couple of good seasons in the Prem.
And with his record has the top scorer all time in the Europa League.
Yeah,
2 more goals today.
Absolutely. So he got a brace today. Marseille had a fantastic game. And then one last game of interest. We talked about in the group chat. We were sending texts. Leverkusen with a heavily rotated side apparently didn't take Karabag all that seriously. Went down early 2-0 at halftime. Had to make a couple substitutions, get their regular starters in there, and they did, finish the game at a draw. They did not break their unbeaten streak this season. They're still unbeaten in all competitions, which is a crazy feat, but that was a scary moment for them. I wouldn't be overly confident going into that second leg. They're going to have to play a full force team. They probably wanted to rest a couple players, but it didn't fully work out until the second half.
And pretty incredible too. If you look at the stats, they were absolutely dominated in the first half. They got outshot 9-2. I mean, that's pretty crazy considering how awesome they've been playing this season. I know they have a pretty heavily rotated side, but I was kind of shocked to check the score at halftime while I was watching the Roma game and see that they were down 2-0. I actually couldn't believe it.
Yeah, that was definitely wishful thinking. That I don't think they're a good team. They're a good squad. They're not good enough to drop essentially their entire attack and half their defense and rotate them out. So yeah, definitely a little bit of a scare, but yeah, they just went and showed their quality of with those starters that went in and took over and were able to get a result. So yeah, I'm sure Xabi Alonso won't make that mistake twice.
Yeah, he won't. I mean, it's good that they recovered from it, because if you want to make mistakes, you want to not have too much weight. Obviously, it was a bit scary, mostly just for the record of being unbeaten all season. Obviously, they had the second leg to make up for it, so we'll see how that one goes. But now getting into where we are invested, I guess I'll start myself. My team was the first one to play because of actually a doubleheader in Lisbon. Both Lisbon teams hosted this game week, so therefore Sporting had to play on Wednesday to not overpopulate the city, which would have been a mess. So Sporting did host Atalanta, another big game for the Italian coefficient. A big game in general. This is two, teams on pretty good form. Atalanta did unfortunately lose to Bologna at the weekend. And it looks like Amorim took a little bit out of Thiago Motta's book. We did score early from a great play. Paulinho, I'm surprised, and normally he's one of his biggest haters, had a fantastic finish on the break. But then Scamacca capitalized on a Sporting error at the back where to even it out. But then both teams were kind of rotated in this one. There was a lot of rotation. I know we were talking mostly about Sporting. But I think there's actually a couple key players. I'm sure, Gianluca, you can probably pick a couple out that normally don't get the start for Atalanta and did this game. So I felt the game was a little bit slow-paced. I didn't think it was as exciting as I think this fixture will be in the return leg when I think both teams will really field a full-force team. I think both teams look like they wanted to rotate and then hopefully scavenge something and then look for the second leg, as they've both had been pretty busy schedules these past couple weeks. Sporting were just uncharacteristically unorganized at the back. It was shades of the Sporting that I know and hate to love. A couple seasons ago where we just didn't look all that convincing at the back, a couple sloppy errors, pass backs. Quaresma, who I thought had a good game defensively wise, just kept making poor passes and choices at the back. So it was a bit dangerous. But we managed to scrape that out, get the point, go into the second leg. It's interesting. John, you probably had your eyes on this game. How did you feel?
Yeah, I did. I was obviously really interested going into it because you being the Sporting fan, and I always root for Atalanta. They're such a darling club in Serie A. But I think I was actually kind of surprised to see Gasperini rotate the side so much. I mean, obviously Atalanta are playing for a place in the Champions League this season, so they do need to be firing on all cylinders in the league. But they have everything to play for, I think, in the Europa League. I think that they should back themselves against any team that they draw. And I was kind of disappointed in their display, actually, overall. I was really shocked that Gyökeres didn't play on the other side for Sporting. Yeah. And my takeaway from really the whole team selection for Sporting is, I think I said it in the group chat too, is it just feels like Amorim's packing it in for the league. I think he could care less about winning the Europa League at this point. I think his full focus is on winning the league, and I feel like the Sporting fans are probably fully with that as well. I don't think you winning the Europa League would just be whatever. If they get knocked out, whatever. Like, it's just the league is the focus. Beating out Benfica and Porto, that's the main thing, I think.
Yeah, and that's actually I had mentioned that I think last week, that when we had talked about, would we be upset of getting knocked out or how far do we expect to go? I'm genuinely like, obviously winning the Europa is winning the Europa League, right? If we manage to do that, it's fantastic, it's exciting. But I think we've made a good account of ourselves. We played decent in the group stage. Atalanta obviously being the team that outdid us actually in the group. We did good in that round of 32, if that's what you want to call it. So to take this game, Atalanta's a strong side too. I'm not going to be upset losing to them.
And big picture too, like if you're a Sporting fan, you guys can be playing in the Champions League next season. Like, is the Europa League really that important to you right now? Right. I don't think so.
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah. Jay, I don't know if you have comments.
Yeah, for me, that was actually still a solid team for a pretty big rotation that Sporting put out. So I don't think they should necessarily put too much focus on that. You finally got Paulinho back starting as a striker, and he scores. So that was good. It's good to get contributions from others, especially when you're starting Gyökeres on the bench.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, probably a little bit lackluster and not necessarily up to par with their past performances. But I don't think they'll be too upset with it. And yeah, like you guys said, that they're definitely going to focus on the league. They don't necessarily have the squad depth, even though they kind of proved a little bit of it today, or really that acumen to go ahead and compete for 3 trophies, which they are right now with the league, the Taça de Portugal, and then this too. So I don't think they're going to want to kind of go crazy on either of the 2 cups and really focus on the league.
Right, and I think both teams can take obviously a couple negatives from this game, but also a couple positives. Atalanta obviously proving that they can rotate and still compete at a high level and play really well. I think Atalanta should back themselves if they progress through this round and field a full-fledged team. They could back themselves to make a final, make a semi. So they should be pretty confident. Sporting, at least defensively, was lackluster. But like you said, Jay, when I saw Gyökeres in the bench, I was like, we're probably not going to get much going forward. But the fact that we scored first, probably had the bulk of the chances in the opening 20. I thought that was really good sign to see, because obviously a lot of arrows point for Gyökeres to go out the door this summer for big money. He did make a comment that he would like to stay for another year, but he doesn't know. Obviously, he doesn't want to give anybody false hope. But it's good to see that at least we can still move forward. Maybe a couple players learned a thing or two from his quality and mentality. So I definitely.
Yeah. The only weird thing for the rotation for me was that they don't play again till Sunday. Like, they've got time. It's not like they had a quick succession game. I thought they could have. They probably could have gotten away with not doing that much rotation, considering they played on the Wednesday and then they have until Sunday again. So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe it would have been different if it was Thursday instead of Wednesday, because they did play on Sunday, the last game of the weekend. So it probably just felt like a lot of congestion. I'm sure he knows what he's doing. Obviously, they didn't lose, so it wasn't the most entertaining of games, but it's a good one to see, because I think tactically there was a lot of tactic matchups that are going to be interesting, especially when they both go really at it in the second leg. So it's going to be definitely one to watch next week. But speaking of an Italian team, we'll go to your Roma, G,
Yes, sir.
where you had a fantastic game. Daniele De Rossi's Roma is still flying. I know I wasn't convinced at his first appointment, but he's proven me wrong thus far. This is so Ange always critiques you, saying that you haven't had too many real tests. Obviously, the one real test was Inter, and didn't go all to plan. But Brighton are a fantastic team, top 10 side in the Premier League, and you guys dismantled them. But tell me, break it down for me how that game went.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. I think I said it over this weekend in the last episode. I felt like the way we press under De Rossi now really matches up well to the way that Brighton try to build up from the back, and I felt like that was exactly what we saw in the first half. I mean, we forced so many mistakes from Brighton trying to build out of the back, and that's really how we were making all of our chances. We went up 2-0, and I felt like we were cruising. I mean, I never felt like Brighton really threatened us. I was honestly shocked. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I was very excited looking ahead to this game. But I would never say that going into this game I thought we were gonna fucking destroy them like we did. I actually couldn't believe what I was seeing. And yeah, I think from a Brighton perspective, it was. I know De Zerbi doesn't. He's always stuck in his ways and he doesn't like to change. But like at some point, I felt like he needed to stop trying to play the team so high up the field, because they left themselves open at the back for just every counterattack. I mean, we had so many good transitions. We really could have scored 5 or 6 if we wanted to in this game. But I mean, it's a great result. We're pretty much I back us to go through in the second leg 100%. I don't think there's any reason or any fear in my eyes. But it was another brilliant performance across the board from everybody. Everybody played well, and another shutout for Svilar. He's just so good, man. I love watching him in net and watching him do his thing. He's really made that job his own, and you can tell like the difference that he's made. Like the players don't fear that when the ball is going towards him that he's going to drop it and they have to do a mad scramble to get the ball out of the box, because that's exactly what happens every time the ball is near Rui Patricio. He never holds on to it. He's never able to get a strong punch on the ball, but Svilar commands the box so well, and it's awesome. It's exactly what we needed, because we were so leaky at the back to start the first half of the season, really across the board, which is not something you say about a Mourinho team. But since De Rossi puts Svilar in, it's been a night and day difference, and I can't ask for anything more. Really, it was a great result across the board. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. I mean, I was just gonna say, for me, to speak on the Brighton side first, it was a little weird decision to have such a young team, and not try to extract every single bit of European experience from your squad into this game. You got players like Veltman, Fati, who don't get the start, and then you also have Lallana, who doesn't even see the game. I know they're probably not going to be first choice in games, but I feel like that would be very valuable to such a young team without any real European experience. And I think that's probably one thing that he'll probably look back on and regret. But yeah, like you guys mentioned with De Rossi, I'll hold my hand up. I did not back him at all, and he's got this team flying. So yeah, credit to him and credit to the squad for really turning it around. And yeah, G, you're welcome for first few lot.
Yeah, thank you. I have to say, but like De Rossi, like it's actually unbelievable. Like De Zerbi is not a bad coach at all, and
Not at all.
tactically, De Rossi matched him up perfectly. I thought in this game, and
Yeah.
that's all credit to him. Really, I think he got the game plan spot on, and even like I said last week, his substitutions again spot on. He brings the guys in at the right time. He took off the ball after 72 minutes. I mean, the game was gone at that point. It was already
Yeah.
4-0, and it gave Baldanzi a good 25 minutes to get his legs in Europe, which is good. I can't ask for anything more, really. I really can't.
I mean, 11 for 11, you're backing Roma every day. So they probably should be winning this game. The problem under Mourinho is they weren't winning games they were supposed to.
We weren't playing like this.
No, and you weren't playing well. This is how you should have been playing. This is how you should have been performing. These are results.
You're always on the back foot under Jose. Always on the back foot.
Because I mean, like you got world class players, granted at the twilight of their career. But like El Shaarawy was on his day was fantastic. Lukaku
had a great game today too. He always plays well.
So it's like it's good to see that they still got gas in the tank and they're still getting good results for you.
Yeah, I mean, give Brighton like a little bit of a benefit of the doubt. A couple injuries, obviously, to some key players. João Pedro injured, Mitoma, James Milner, Solly March, players that have put in either consistent performances or at least a couple one-off ones that could have changed this game potentially. But all credit to Roma, who it's funny too. This is a good example that El Shaarawy really kind of getting in there too, because mostly in terms of that front three, you're mostly relying on Dybala and Lukaku to get the goals. But he was a super creative outlet at this game, probably one of the better players in this game too. So that was pleasant to see. And you know what, for Roma too, this comes at a nice time because you do have to you have to go away to Fiorentina, which is not going to be a simple game, especially you guys are fighting to maintain fifth or even break into the top four to get a Champions League spot for next season. Obviously, this win also gets you the coefficient, gets you closer to that fifth Champions League spot. So all in all, it gives you the opportunity to rest probably next way around. You probably don't have to go to Brighton next week and field a perfectly strong side. You can really go at it this weekend. 4-0, it's a big comeback. It's going to take a lot for Brighton to overcome that deficit. So I think this sets you up actually really, really well for the second leg.
Zerbi might just want to see the Italians get the fifth team.
Yeah, maybe.
So he might say, you know what, let's let Roma win.
I don't know if the upper echelons of Brighton would be too happy if that's true, but staying in Italy before we come back to Portugal for Jay. Ange isn't here, but Milan had a pretty good showing. A little fortunate they got a red card early, which, I know you thought it was soft. I did think it was a bit soft, but I think the referee sees the studs kind of come up. He does really catch Pulisic on the leg, and I think it's not soft enough for VAR to say it's clear and obvious, not a red. Do you know what I'm saying about that?
Yeah, I agree.
It's tough to overturn.
It was one of those yellow-orange ones, you know?
Right.
It could go either way.
That was fair to me. I mean, especially in real time, it's dangerous and reckless, and you can clearly see it's above the ankles. You can't fault that at all. Yeah,
it's unfortunate because he's actually a young player from Senegal, and he actually has I think a decently bright future. So it was unfortunate that he had to go off so early. But then Milan took a full advantage of Florenzi with a brace of assists, and he only played 46 minutes. Pulisic had a great game. Pulisic, the one that drew the red card. It's like he's doing it for fun after this game at the weekend with Lazio. I remember saying that in the group chat. There must be some sort of stat of how many red cards you can draw in a certain number of games. But goals again from Loftus-Cheek and Giroud. Giroud aging like a fine wine. Leao, who I thought had actually scored that goal, it was a brilliant play. Super talented baller. I know your brother was absolutely ecstatic with how he played at today. So, but G, you probably caught some of the game too. How did you feel about it?
I did, yeah. I felt like, I gotta be honest, I felt like if Slavia didn't get a red card, I think that this game would have been completely different. I thought they caused a lot of problems to Milan, and I think my brother felt that too. We were talking about the game earlier, and he said the same thing. Other than that, though, I think Milan played overall a very good game. I think it was really encouraging if you're a Milan fan to see that they kept the gas on the whole time. They played the whole 90 minutes. They never stopped attacking, which is really good. It's not something I think I could say a lot about watching Milan play, but they definitely did that in this game, and it was a good sign. I'm glad you brought up to Florenzi too, because my brother wanted me to mention this. He said that he thinks Florenzi being in the team makes Milan play like a completely different team, and I have to agree. I mean, I think he bombs up that right side so much better. His crosses are unbelievable. I mean, it's such a dangerous ball into the box that he plays every single time, and he really. I mean, when you have such a threat like Giroud in the box, I mean, how can you not have your best crosses on the field at all times? So I think he was very pretty much spot on there with that analysis. And he wanted me to shout out Reinders too, who scored a great goal today.
Yep.
I guess he recently had the birth of his son, so
Really?
pretty cool to see him score and honor that, which is nice. And I did want to, from the Slavia Prague side, I want to shout out Dudera, because what a goal he scored. He did beat Magnan at his right, which I texted in the group chat right after that and said Magnan getting beat at his right again. But oh my God, what a bullet! I mean, no goalkeeper in the world was saving that. It was a screamer. Goal of the day for sure. Actually, goal of the week, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, like you mentioned, I think adding Florenzi back into the team, it gives you that double threat on each side. So I think
Mm-hmm.
before that, you were always worried that the attack was going to break from the left with Teo and Leao. They're the two best players in this team. But now it gives you much more balance, and I think that really, really helps the team creatively and attacking wise. And it's nice to see everybody still able to kind of get it together, and you got goals spread out from all across and contributions. That was
Yeah.
nice.
I got to say though, I think I got to give my brother a lot of credit, because I think my favorite player from watching this game was Adley. I mean, what a player this kid is, dude. I have to give Angelo so much credit, because from the moment Milan signed him, he was saying, watch out for this kid, watch out for this kid. And he stuck with it all along. Pioli refused to
Yeah.
play him, and Angelo's like, I don't care. When he gets in the team, watch out. And dude, he is so silky on the ball. Some of the passes this kid plays is unbelievable, dude. He's got such good vision on the field. I mean, it must be such a luxury to have a player like that in your team. I can only imagine. I really, I don't say this a lot about opposing players, but I really, really, especially Milan players, but I have to say I really enjoy watching Adley play week in and week out.
Yeah. Ange has been hyping him up for a while, even when he had his loan move to, I can't even remember where. I think it was somewhere in France. It's escaping
Bordeaux,
me.
I think.
I think it was Bordeaux. He was saying it all the time. I watched a couple of games, and I remember, like, thinking he was pretty good, but Ange was on it 100%. And Jay, I'm glad you mentioned the balance thing. You stole the words right out of my mouth. It's funny enough, I actually picked Florenzi to go into the so rare little battle that we were doing today, watching this game. Because if you look at Milan week in, week out, even if you don't get a chance to watch the games, just come onto a FOTMob, look at the score sheets. You see everything coming through that left hand side. Yeah, Pulisic draws fouls, he gets a goal here and there to bring a little bit of a balance to the team to the right side, but it's almost always created through Teo Hernandez and Rafael Leao. And now adding Florenzi, like G was saying, bombing up that right hand side, it just creates this complete double threat. I mean, I think the biggest hole now in Milan is to get their center back sorted. I know Ange is mentioning that through injury, it's not always the best center back pairing, but I mean, as far as the flanks go in the midfield, I mean, you can't complain at all. Your both flanks are equally as strong going forward and hanging back. Your midfield, this trio is absolutely solid. All three of them getting goals or assists pretty much week in, week out. So yeah, if you're Ange, if you're a Milan fan, you got to be extremely happy
Yeah.
with how this is right now, especially with Florenzi coming back. It looks fantastic. But if we have nothing else to say on that game, I will hand the floor over to Jay, where we're headed back to Lisbon, where Benfica managed a 2-2 draw. Just more of the same from the weekend. If you saw the last episode, me and Jay talked about how he had an abysmal weekend. It was a nightmare weekend for Benfica, and it didn't really change too much. I mean, you get the draw, and it opens you up for a pretty good chance to win it in the second leg, but they do have to travel to Scotland. But they get 2 goals from a penalty and an own goal, not scoring from open play by their own hands. So I'm sure Jay has some choice words, but I'll give it to you.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a bad performance. I think it was the best performance they've had in probably the last 2 weeks. The only problem, I think, is just playing in that through this period where you get embarrassed by Porto, you lose to Sporting, and everything else is affected. And I think this game is just a result of that this time period. It was a lot of good things that you could see starting to happen in terms of the way they played. but nobody really seemed like they were on the same page, and they kind of lost a lot of good opportunities from that. A lot of runs being made that players weren't ready to make the pass for. A lot of misplaced passes, and it was just it was tough to watch sometimes. But yeah, I mean, it was back to basics pretty much with the lineup. Finally got Bob back in the team. Still not playing Alvaro Carreras when he came in. He only came in with 6 minutes to go. I would have liked to see him get a start. Kokchu nowhere to be found again. So it's just that the lineup choices is still really odd to me. Um, and I know always been mentioning getting Arthur Cabral back or a striker back. Doesn't mean it has to be Arthur Cabral. It just means to be a real striker that we get in form. I think we burned him. He was terrible when he started with Benfica. We were making jokes and saying we didn't even know if he was a real striker. But then he finally was able to put together 5 or 6 games. Looked fantastic with scoring, assisting, just being a good target man and hold up play. And then all of a sudden, we decided we don't want to play him anymore. Wasn't because he was playing poorly or anything. But now you took your most informed striker, which we haven't had since Gonzalo Ramos left in the summer, and you burned him. And now we, again, have no informed striker. So, yeah, it's just a lot of systematic decisions haven't been strategic enough, and I think it's really burning us right now. I would like to trash on Di Maria playing 90 minutes again, but he was probably one of the most threatening players. But he, again, does a lot of stupid things, trying to draw fouls, trying to draw penalties when they really aren't there, when there's better options. But yeah, I just don't think a 4 attacker formation and system was really the way to go today, and that probably let them down.
Yeah, as it suits my bias, I'm going to be heavily critical of Benfica and Benfiquistas actually too, because like I've been critical of Roger Smith. I still just don't think he's just doing all that well right now. But if Benfica had a checklist, Benfiquista fans, I should say, Benfica fans, damn, had a checklist, it went get João Mario off the pitch, play fullbacks, play a real striker, probably Artur Cabral, and play Florentino Luis. You got Luis, you got Cabral, you got João Mario off the pitch, and you got one of 2 fullbacks. You got 90% of your checklist, and it still was, until the last 30, 35 minutes, wasn't Benfica's best performance, and I think there was a lot to be desired. And another thing too, Benfica, I've been pretty envious, I'll admit, of some of their transfer market pulls and some of these young kids and wonder kids that they're pulling and bringing in and stuff. But some of their other signings, some of their other players, they don't even play like real Benfiquistas. Your biggest Benfiquista on that pitch is João Neves. That man plays for the badge. He plays with incredible mentality. Auschwitz plays really well too, Antonio Silva as well. But you're just not getting that. Like, what makes Benfica a threat year in year out is their strong fan base that motivates these players to play for blood. Like they bleed red as humans do, but bleed red as in bleed Benfica, and it just doesn't feel like that. All full forwards on any time they were playing well going forward. Anytime they lost the ball going forward, especially in those opening 2 goals for Rangers, they just had nothing going back. They were lackluster getting back, and there was no effort going back. If it wasn't for João Neves, and I think Antonio Silva and Otamendi had a much better game compared to that Porto game.
Didn't take much.
It could, it could have gone more towards Rangers. Obviously, Benfica had the bulk of the chance, and Butland, despite conceding twice, it's not really to his fault, had a fantastic game in that. He made a lot of good saves. Benfica, could have scored more too, but it's just uninspiring in terms of some of these players' performances. And then, like you said, choices too. Like, Artur Cabral has to get back in this game. He doesn't get a good game, but then you only give him an hour to show what he's got when you've benched him for practically 3 games, except for getting a cameo in the Porto game when you're already losing by a bunch of goals. And you put in Marcus Leonardo, who, comes off the bench, does great, but you're barely getting him off the bench too. You've absolutely iced 2 players who are on form, either starting or coming off the bench, and then you're going to use this game where you really need something to happen, and you're just hoping they just catch that form again. It's just, I don't know. It's just, for me, the choices are poor, but also the performances from the individuals is not helping either, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'll just quickly counter your 90% checklist thing. it still wasn't even close to what we want. I mean, we've been asking just for do the basics. We played four attackers in a 3 attacker formation, meaning we played an attacker midfield. We just want our 3 central midfielders and our 2 fullbacks to play with a real striker, and we still can't get that. And I think it's just screaming. That's the most obvious thing on paper. That is going to be our best team, is to play that way, and we can't do it. I mean, I think you could see the difference with João Mario not playing in the field, with Florentino playing in his place. It was a lot more purposeful, everything we did. So that was encouraging to see. But I don't know. I feel like he played just as to shut everybody up, and he's not going to play in the next game either.
But see, my thing is, right. Okay, you want a fullback, so you have to pull Auschwitz off the field. You're going to leave Auschwitz off this field? Who are you going to put in for? David Neres? You've been calling for Neres to get on the field. Who are you going to play Kokshu for? Rafa Silva? Rafa Silva is your best player going forward. Di is not carrying that team. It's like, who are you pulling off for the players that you want? You know what I mean? I think this is probably Benfica's best lineup. I mean, Kokshu had an abysmal game. Kokshu, that was the worst game in Benfica's jersey. Was the game against Porto. You're not playing him in this game. João Mario's been piss poor. And you've been asking for David Neres. He gets on the field. Cabral should have been playing these past couple of weeks. He doesn't, but you get him in this game. Rafa Silva is your best player going forward, week in, week out. Can't even say it. Auschwitz does a decent job unless he's getting burned by an absolute unit on the right-hand side. I don't know. There's not much more you could ask for besides from the players, and then just Roger Schmidt doing this every week rather than once in a blue moon. I don't know.
For me, it's like we were talking about with Milan. There's not enough balance in the team. Like you can't play Rafa as your attacking midfielder and expect him to be the creative one, and also expect him to be the one running on the end of counterattacks and long balls. It doesn't work that way. For me, I honestly would have liked to see Neres start on the bench and come in with 30 minutes to go, and against a tired defense, he'd run circles around everybody. And I think that's what we missed in this game, was somebody fresh off the bench to do something. We've got Thiago Vea with 6 minutes to go. Like, great, what's he going to do? They're going to be starting in their own 18 every attack anyways. So I think, again, it was just poor management decisions from Schmidt, in my opinion.
Right.
But yeah, it's just, I get everything you said, all makes sense. But you have to find balance in the team, and it doesn't flow nicely. There were so many times on the left side, because we don't have a real left back, there was nobody wide to switch the ball to cross in. And we got burnt a few times. We were making passes into a compact box in the midfield, in the middle of the pitch, and we were losing the ball. So I think there's it's very obvious issues to fix. It's tough to watch sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree. I think Roger Schmidt, Benfica had a lot of momentum, but you're looking at the scoreline, you're looking at how they're actually getting the ball in the back of the net, and he makes a single substitution in the 65th, and with 6 minutes to go, he's like, let me throw on a defender and a really, really young winger. I don't know. It wasn't good choices. But that being said, G, I don't know if you have any comments on the Benfica game.
I was just going to say, I think, if I was you, Jay, I would be very, very nervous for the second leg, because Ibrox is such a difficult place to go.
I don't want to go there.
I think you guys should be very, very mad at yourselves. Actually, I think to play like this at home, not come away with the win, give up 2 goals to Rangers. I think you guys should be pretty disappointed with that result.
Yeah, I mean, it was poor. I mean, especially, I do think that the penalty was correct in the way it happened, and we got a little bit lucky with the own goal, but it was a good delivery.
Yeah.
To not score from open play or even from a true set piece is a little bit concerning too.
It's realistically, your entire season could get derailed in the next week and a half, 2 weeks.
In 10 days, it might be over.
Yeah.
A total of 10 days. It's crazy.
Yeah. So Benfica just not having a good 6-7 day stretch, so it's tough. We'll see if they can rebound. See if they can rebound over the weekend and rebound next Thursday. So that'll be one to watch. And then in the Conference League, not too much to talk about. I think one game that we'll mention in a little bit more detail is the Ajax Aston Villa game, probably the showpiece game of this round. Both teams seeing a red card later on in the match, having to end the game with 10 each. No goals in this one, but some solid performances. from Emi Martinez, who was a rock at the back. Ajax's defense playing really well. Two teams that are probably trying to get back into some serious form. I know Aston Villa have been hot and cold, and Ajax started real cold, especially to their standards, and they've been trying to climb up the Eredivisie table. So this was an interesting one, and it's going to be even more interesting when we do the return leg in England. I don't know if you guys have any comments on this one.
Yeah, I think looking into this game, I mean, if you look at it, if you're a footy nerd like us, I mean, two former European champions, duking it out in the third tier of European competition at
30
this
years
point in
ago is
time,
gonna be
which is
crazy.
kind of incredible. But overall, I thought it was a terrible game. I mean, it sucked. Both teams took 4 shots. Nobody was expected to score more than a goal. I mean, you can't get a much more boring game than that. However, I do think that it sets it up for a very, very exciting second leg at Villa Park. I think that's going to be a great game.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's just not a good game. It was probably one everybody circled. It was probably going to be a good one, but it's two historic clubs just going in opposite directions. That Ajax squad just is not impressive at all. Granted, is probably there's good players in there. They're just going to need some time to develop, but just nothing that screams Ajax. They've always been had a good succession plan for all their teams, and they just don't have it this season. Where Villa, on the other hand, has been able to put together a really good squad, and they're challenging the top four. So yeah, I definitely would have expected Villa to probably get it done, but yeah, it was a tougher game, but they'll definitely back themselves at home next leg.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of a highlights. I will say that despite obviously not too much going forward for either team, Martinez was making some great claims on crosses and coming out of his box, and which he does so well. Obviously, he's a master of the dark arts. We saw how well he performed in the World Cup. So shout out to him in that game. A couple more score lines. I know I'm going to get to one that G's going to want to talk about, but I'll just run down. We had a couple of high-scoring games. The Olympiacos game, they lost 4-1. Lille put 3 past Sturm Graz away, which is not an easy feat. Those are some serious, intense fans. You see them all over Europe, no matter where you go. Dinamo Zagreb put 2 past PAOK. And then the Fiorentina game, a 7-goal thriller. Fiorentina coming out 4-3 winners away to Maccabi Haifa. G, I'm sure you have a couple thoughts, but that's an intense game of football. I'm sure it's going to be one that if you didn't catch it and you want to watch something on the highlights, I'm sure this weekend, that is definitely one to watch. But tell us about it, G.
Yeah, it definitely was the game of the day today. I mean, it was an unbelievable game. Real quick, too, I just want to shout out both the Israeli teams made great accounts of themselves today, considering all the political things going on. Obviously, they're not playing at home in their countries. They're playing at neutral grounds, I guess you would call it, outside in Europe. So I think it's pretty cool to see that they're playing so well. Maccabi Haifa, though, I mean, what a performance they played. I thought they were pretty unfortunate to not come away with 3 points or at least a tie in this game. But it showed great determination from Fiorentina to go away from home at Maccabi away. I mean, obviously it's not in Israel, but to away, score 4 goals, and then they have the home return leg. I mean, obviously you don't want to give up 3, but it was. I thought it was just a brilliant game of football overall. And I do want to shout out one player from Maccabi Haifa, Franzi Perro, Boston native. One of my college roommates actually went to high school with this guy, which is pretty cool. At the time, he was playing in the Haiti national team. He went to Boston College, played there. Now he's kicking ball out in Europe, playing in the Conference League, which is pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, I remember you had told us about that before. That is pretty cool. I mean, he's living.
Yeah, he scored in both games, in both the first and second leg in the round of 32, which is pretty awesome, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's just he's living all of our dreams, is he not? One of Europe's obviously biggest stages. And then one final game of the weekend that was kind of a surprise to me, in my opinion, especially Fenerbahce playing away, but they absolutely dismantled USG in Belgium, 3-0. A friendly name on the score sheet, Dusan Tadic, with a goal from the penalty spot. I'm surprised at this one. USG are usually pretty strong at home, and they've had an excellent season. So to get absolutely dusted and done apart by Fenerbahce is not something that was on my bingo card. I don't know if you guys caught any highlights or anything about this game.
Yeah, I had to say I was very surprised too. I felt like they would have definitely put up more of a fight. I mean, they've been so good in the Belgian league this season. They have such a clear lead too. I think they're 8 points clear right now, so they had every reason to field the strong lineup and really go for this game. I think USG should consider themselves at least a favorite to make the final, I think, or at least a semifinal. But they definitely did not play like it in this game, and Fenerbahce absolutely dominated them. I thought, and I think it was pretty cool actually to see Michy Batshuayi score in Europe again. That's a name I always like to see every once in a while.
Yeah.
A lot of familiar faces in that Fenerbahce team.
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, I think that's definitely going to be tough for a 3-0 is definitely tough to overcome. So probably be an exciting second leg, but in my opinion, it's probably done and dusted.
Yeah, I mean, not to mention going to Turkey is insane.
Yeah,
those
away.
fans are always out for blood, no matter who you are. I mean, Fenerbahce, credit like Jay said, there's a couple of good names on the sheet. Credit to them too. They're second in the Turkish league right now, only to Galatasaray. And yeah, I mean, you have Fred, a former United player. So Yonchu played in the Premier League. Livavkovic, why am I forgetting where he played before that?
Zagreb.
Zagreb, and we all know Zagreb performed really well in Europe. So yeah, there's a couple of good names on that sheet. They're putting together a little bit of a squad, and obviously they proved it today. So overall, Conference League, a lot of high-scoring goals. Definitely, if something you have the time to watch or you want to watch highlights, it's this third-tier competition of Europe is something that has finally grown. I think we mentioned it before, grown into something kind of exciting. We weren't. I mean, personally, when it was first announced a couple of years back, I wasn't overly convinced. But I think it's a bit of excitement to get to see some of these clubs really and put their talent on display. But overall, a good week. The UCL hopefully starts to live up to its historic expectation next week. We certainly hope so. The UEL has been fantastic. Obviously, we're a little bit more invested. We hope to see all of our clubs progress. We all have it all to play for in the next week. The Portuguese teams have it a little bit harder than the Italian teams who have an advantage going away. But we'll see how that has to work out. And of course, we'll see some of those return fixtures of the ones we talked about in the Conference League. Now we'll have to do our five-a-side. So we hand it over to G to pick a keeper this week. G, I feel like you're going to be a little bit biased and pick Roma's keeper, but a couple other good performances this week. G, who did you have?
Yeah, I obviously I want to pick Spieler, but I really don't because he was just in the team pretty recently. I thought, I mean, it was pretty cool to see Jack Butland playing in the Europa League and have a good performance at Benfica. I think he made some pretty important saves. I thought Donnarumma played pretty well for PSG. But I mean, Spieler did keep a clean sheet. You can't say that about a lot of goalkeepers this week in the midweek for all these European games. I thought he played pretty well. He made the saves he needed to make. So I think I'd have to give my nod to Spieler as much as I don't really want to, but I think I have to give it to him.
Yeah, I can't necessarily disagree. I know I mentioned who did Benfica
Martinez?
play? I mean Martinez as well as oh my God, I'm forgetting his name right now. Oh, the Rangers keeper.
Butland. Martinez made one save though. That's the reason why I don't really have too much to gloat about with him. You know, one save.
It was more of the sweeper keeper aspect, but yeah, I know I totally agree. And but I think Butland would be a good shout too if he doesn't concede twice.
Yeah, but I also don't think he actually made too many crazy saves. I mean, he was solid.
We only have 4 or 5
shots on target.
There's a difference.
He made a few of them, yeah. But yeah, I mean, conceded 2. Granted, tough ones, a penalty and an own goal. But
yeah, I mean, he did have a decent amount to deal with, especially in that last half hour. But yeah, no other super outstanding performances for many keepers per se. So I think Sviljar gets a little bit lucky, but he did have a good game and deserves to be in the spot. As far as defenders goes, any names that jump off the page for you guys?
Yeah, I think I'm going to shout out Florenzi. I thought he was great. Yeah. 2 assists in the first half.
Yep.
I think he's a pretty much a no-brainer pick for me.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Agree. Like Jay said, only playing half the game and managing to have such an impact on the game itself despite not playing the full 90 is definitely worthy of that spot. As far as midfielders go, I mentioned earlier in the Liverpool game, Harvey Elliott did have a hat trick of assists. So that's obviously no easy feat, especially in such a dominant performance over Sparta Prague playing away as well. I don't know if you guys had any other names you wanted to throw out there for that position.
Nah, I think Harvey Elliott pretty much wrote himself in with that hat trick of assists, to be honest. I don't really have anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple of good performances around Europe, but I think that was a standout, and he really dictated the game.
Definitely.
Especially in a Liverpool midfield that he doesn't always stand out. We always say that when they rotate, every player does really, really well. He really made himself stand out in that game, so it's a good shout for sure. And then we'll get to forwards, where we had, I think, quite a bit of a discussion that we can have here in terms of who got forward the best. I don't know if anybody wants to throw a name out first.
Yeah, I'll shout Darwin Nunez.
Mm-hmm.
Finally coming into some good form for Liverpool. And he had a brace today as well, so I think that was a good performance.
Yeah, Darwin's definitely a good one. I think Leao's a good shout too, even though he didn't get credited with the goal. I thought he was brilliant again. Angelo texted us in the group chat and said that Leao's the best Milan player he's ever seen. Put the shirt on, so I think he gets at least a mention. But I do think Darwin Nunez probably has to be the pick. I mean, 2 goals again today. He's been on unbelievable form lately, and I think it's pretty nice actually. I wouldn't say I backed Darwin when he first joined Liverpool to be a proven goal scorer and be bagging goals week in and week out, but he's certainly proven me wrong. I mean, he's definitely found his finishing boots after he couldn't even hit a fucking barn door for the first 6 months of his Liverpool career. So I think it's pretty nice that he's definitely found his scoring form.
I should have expected it, to be honest, because it was the same with Benfica. Terrible first season, or not terrible, but not that great first season, but blue door second season. So it looks like he's starting to do that now again.
I don't think it didn't help. It didn't help for Nunez, especially because Haaland joined the league too. So he gets compared to someone who's, I mean, he's just a caliber above everyone else. You know what I mean? You can't compare Haaland to anyone that's playing right now.
Yeah, I remember that Charity Shield, his first game. That was it. All everybody talked about was Nunez versus Haaland.
Yeah.
Nunez versus Haaland.
Yeah, it wasn't a fair comparison, and I think he's growing into his shoes that he needed to fill. But I want to throw a wrench in the conversation for forward. Obviously, we already have a Liverpool representative. We had a couple braces at the weekend, especially ones with some serious implications. PSG, Mbappe's brace sees them through to the next round. Kane for Bayern Munich inspired them to the game. I don't think they even get that ball rolling without him getting that somewhat sloppy goal in the back of the net. And then, of course, we also had Julian Alvarez, who saw 2 goal contributions with a goal and an assist. So I don't think the conversation is overly easy, especially if we want to be a little bit fair to all competitions. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts. Aubameyang, too. We mentioned him earlier, obviously maintaining his lead as the Europa League's top goal scorer with 2 goals on the day. So I think that mixes it up a little bit. I mean, El Shaarawy, even had 2 assists today, so I don't know if that changes anything for you guys.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, out of all the players you mentioned, I think the only player I would really give the shout to was probably Harry Kane. I think his performance out of all of them was the most influential and most impactful on the result of his game. You're right. I think if Harry Kane doesn't score that goal, I think it ends up a completely different result for Bayern.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, the floodgates absolutely open. So I think the forward of the weekend should be Harry Kane, but I don't mind some of those other mentions for forward for the flex position. I like Darwin too. I think especially what it means for him, getting his confidence and maintaining his form, especially in a Liverpool side that have a lot of forwards that can be good. So if you're not on it the best, I mean, Jurgen Klopp likes to mix it up every now and then. So yeah, I think Darwin Nunez is a good flex for us. So that about wraps it up. So that means we have Svilar in net, Florenzi on the defense, Harvey Elliott and Darwin Nunez from Liverpool make our side, with Harry Kane at the focal point, inspiring Bayern to the quarterfinal for Bayern in the Champions League. So that's all for this week. Make sure you keep up with all our videos, keep up with our social media, and keep on being